Welcome to the Gritty Podcast. I am your host, Brian Call, and I am joined by my brother, the Gritty Broman. How are you, Brent?
I'm well. Thank you.
On today's podcast, we're going to talk a little bit more about elk hunting from this year, the lessons learned, and I want to talk about wind. That's kind of the topic I want to cover a little bit, and hunt strategies, being that we spent some time in some open country this time, did a lot of spot and stalk, and I did not use an elk call the entire season, except for to stop the bull I shot. So I want to get into that. Before we do, use the code GRITTY at a few places. Check out our coupon codes in the description field to help us out. Well, some of the things I think you should look into right now. It's still archery season, so you should look at, I like Black Eagle arrows. I use the Black Eagle X Impact micro diameter shaft, and I run the Valkyrie broadhead delivery system on that. And you can use the code GRITTY, I think, at Valkyrie. Always double check the codes in the description field of the videos. But you can use the code GRITTY at Valkyrie and you save 10%. 10% off. And that helps a lot because it's not cheap. But they are lifetime and they are phenomenal. These broadheads are amazing. So check that out. And then use the code GRITTY at Mark Livesey's e-scouting class. If you've got some more hunts ahead of you, you should take that class. You should have 2 or 3 routes and plans for your hunt. If one area turns out to be a bust, you have your backup area you hit. You use the scouting information you learn from Mark to really hone in on areas that are going to hold animals. And when they don't, or some other dude is there to blow up your hunt, you have 2 or 3 backup plans. Especially if you're coming from out of state, you can, if you have to pack out, drive to the next spot, hit that one, or even just skip while you're in the woods to the next area. It's so handy, and it can be the difference between success and failure. And Mark doesn't just teach you how to use maps. He teaches you what to look for in terms of where animals feed, what elk are attracted to, where they like to bed, all that stuff. It's very useful. And then sheep feet. Those guys, their custom orthotics have been awesome. I've been using them a bunch. Check them out. And then Sissy Sticks over at Peaks Equipment. You can use the code GRITTY there and save yourself some money on some killer trekking poles. They're the carbon uppers, aluminum lowers. I can't say enough good things about them. They're really, every time we have a complaint or we're like, hey, we'd like the tips to be quiet, but you lose the tips when you go in the mud. We want a basket that's small enough it doesn't catch in the grass. We just keep getting them modified and updated so that they're just perfect for hunters. Because as a skier, you don't care if they're quiet,
Yeah.
And you don't necessarily care that they weigh particularly lightweight or anything. So each of these things are really custom made for the hunter, and I think that's pretty cool. Just check out our codes. All right, let's get into this podcast. I wanted to talk about, I did a podcast with Brian Barney earlier in the year, and he's like, yeah, I just quit using calls altogether. I don't even bring them with me. And
it's such a power move. Yeah, whatever. I don't even use that.
And last year, I didn't use calls hardly at all either. And I had the most success on mature herd bulls that I've had, in a lot of years. Because you completely change your tactics from, calling as a primary hunting tactic to straight up just ninja stalking through the woods.
Because a lot of people just want to do the walk around, try to find a bull willing to play with them.
Right, and it's awesome, especially if you haven't done it much. And to have bulls scream and come in, and maybe you're not confident in your sneaky skills or your ability to get close or that kind of thing.
But sometimes they're just not talking. They don't want to play.
Yeah. So this is a different technique, definitely, to leave calls behind. But I've gotten to the point where I want to target a specific bull. I don't want just the bull that is comes running in to be the bull I shoot. You might have to call in a lot of elk. You might spend hours working a certain bull thinking he's maybe the big guy, and he comes in and he's not what you're looking for. I wanted to bypass all that and go straight to, I want that bull, and he's the one, and I'm going for it. So I've been looking for more open country type hunts. Now, the open country type hunts are physically demanding. They're next level physical demanding because
they're ups and downs. There's no flat anywhere.
Well, or even if I haven't found a lot of open country that's flat that you can get a tag for. The only open country hunts I've found that are more over the counter or general tag, those open country hunts are straight up and straight down. There's a reason why. If you go to Arizona, there's a lot of open country hunts that are flat, but it's going to take you 20 years to draw the tag.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of open country flat hunts, but they're draw units. The ones that are not draw are straight up, straight down. So you can make up for, a lack of money and draw and points with fitness, But I prefer seeing elk every day and being able to spot them. I'm confident that if I can find the elk, I can go kill them. And the only other thing that really matters to me is I'm trying to find areas that have a reliable wind, a directional wind that I can count, like reliable thermals or a directional wind every day. You can kind of, stake your life on the fact that the wind's going to do what it's going to do predictably. When you have winds like that, I always say, like, give me time and a reliable wind and I will kill animals. There's a lot of areas, though, that do not give you a reliable wind. It's very swirly and hit and miss. It goes one way for 20 or 30 minutes. It goes the next way for 10 minutes. It goes another way for 40 minutes. And when you're, and in that situation, a lot of times what guys are doing is they're just running around, bumping, calling, trying to take advantage of a moment, getting in front. It's usually thicker country sometimes. Those kinds of winds, I feel like you're just putting yourself out in the mix and you're just getting wild with it. And you're hoping that you're going to capitalize one of these times in the right moment. I prefer to have more control over the hunt. I prefer to know it's going to blow downhill until 8:30 a.m. and then at 8:30 a.m. it's going to blow uphill until 7:30 p.m. and then the wind's going to switch. And I know 100% that wind is never going to blow a different direction during those times. And man, now I can start messing around. This goes for deer, elk, coos deer, mule deer, doesn't matter. And so I tend to hunt areas more than animals. For example, when I'm coos deer hunting in Arizona, there are some areas where the wind just goes one way and then goes another way, and it goes this way and goes that way. Then there are some areas where the wind seems to always blow up on this face. Well, I could spend a lot of time glassing and looking for a big coos deer in the swirly wind area and find them. But the odds of me killing one with the wind the way it is pretty low. And this is especially true when you're not running gun. Okay. So what I mean by that is if you're doing a spot and stalk scenario and you've got to move like the slow hand of a clock, like a snail, like you're moving so slow that the animal can't see your movement.
It's painful.
When you're in that situation, you need time. It might take me, let's say, 3 hours to go 150 yards belly crawling, like inch by inch, doing it right in their faces, right? They can look right at you and you're in the wide open and you're just like, but you're moving so slow you look like you're standing still. That takes time. If the wind switches every 20 minutes, that ain't going to work. So that's why when it's timbered and the wind is switching every 20 or 30 minutes, you can go, well, the wind's holding right now, and you can bust into the 70-yard, 50-yard mark, kind of loud, kind of pushy, but the wind's in your face, but you have to be that way because the wind can switch any minute versus an area where you have the luxury of spending 3, 4, 5 hours, however much time it takes to inch your way into range. I feel in charge. I feel like I have more control when that wind is going to stick and I can go at my own pace. I'm very confident that I can sneak in right under an animal's nose if you give me time and the wind stays where it needs to stay. I've also realized after hunting with guys like Ryan Lampers that guys like that don't rush the stock. They don't. They have a pace they know that they can go that will be effective. You're sneaking up on 70 head of elk, okay? 70 elk are right below you, right? Bulls in the mix with the elk. Wind's in your face. As you're creeping into position on these elk and trying to get within bow range, I got to many times on that hunt, I got to 30 yards from 7, 8 elk. I couldn't go any closer because that's as close as I could get without being detected, without them like, at some point they're going to be like, that rock moved, yeah. I'm right. I'm close. I'm tight. 30 yards from these elk, and there's 7 or 8 of them right there. The bull is 100 yards deeper into the herd and chasing elk and rutting. And every now and then he approaches the edge of the herd where I'm at. And I'm just waiting for that bull to make a mistake.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to get as close as I can to the herd and then have him come to me the rest of the way. And that takes a lot of patience and willingness to wait both in patience in moving in and then patience in waiting for the animal to come to you. And that tactic requires a reliable wind. I can't pull that tactic off on an area where the wind goes back and forth. It just won't work. Thankfully, in a lot of the mountain areas that are steep, you get winds like that. You really get reliable winds. When you get into areas that are low country, thermals and winds change and it's flatter, you get sort of swirling winds, especially in warm September days. And it's very difficult to use that stalking tactic under those conditions. In those conditions, you're almost blazing in, screaming, bugling, fighting, raking a tree, and the bull gets pissed off and he comes screaming in and you shoot him. And that all happened in a decent, favorable window of time where the wind didn't switch on you. If you try that tactic I'm describing in a situation like that, there's 100% chance the wind is going to blow at the elk within an hour window. You don't have the luxury of spending all day moving in and getting into position. So some of the things that I've been doing over the last couple of years is I'm looking for areas where I can actually have a reliable wind. But sometimes you're in an area with great bulls and a lot of elk action, but it swirls. What does a guy do then? Okay. Some hunters will just, that are spot and stock, will just be like, I'm out. I can't hunt this spot. This spot doesn't work very well. But I have found that, especially since I've spent so much time on small acreage and in areas hunting blacktails or hunting whitetails even from tree stands, I've noticed that a lot of Western hunters don't quite understand thermals. They don't quite understand wind and how it works based on
not just
terrain.
wind, but scent in general. Scent is weird.
And each animal handles scent differently. One thing I've noticed with elk, for example, is it seems like they care about whether they smell you in the moment, but they don't necessarily care that they smell you from yesterday.
Yeah, if you walk into a spot and then they come in, they're not super bothered by that.
You can walk right through their wallow that they hit every day.
A blacktail?
Prance around it, do your thing, and then leave and come back, and they'll be there the next day. They can smell that hunters walk through their trails all the time, and they don't care. They come right back the next day. You can't do that to an old whitetail. An old whitetail smells that your foot had walked through that. They're going to go nocturnal for a week or 2 weeks. Elk don't behave that way. Elk are very much like, well, I don't smell him now. Yeah, it smells like he was here. They have a different temperament. I'm not sure what it is, but I just know, like, I can go in and disturb an elk habitat pretty good, and they're still going to come right back the next day. I'll use a different tactic maybe with elk than I will a mature blacktail. Mule deer tend to be the same. You can walk through a mule deer area, and they're going to let it roll. But last year, remember how we wore rubber boots on that late season mule deer hunt when we were hunting in tree stands? It's fascinating. I wore rubber boots into the spot. No idea I was there. And I hike off the main road over to my tree, and I climb into my tree. Almost killed 2 giant bucks. That was an amazing hunt. It was awesome. A lot of people followed it on my IG story. And what I like about that kind of stuff is you're always dealing with winds, and you're guessing what winds do, and you're trying to figure out, does my scent go over the top of these animals, or does it blow down to where these animals are?
Which way is my scent actually being carried?
Yeah, and what do they tolerate? What do they not tolerate? Well, Anthony came out to the same area I was in, and I was like, dude, there's a sweet spot. If you're sitting there, I've seen so many bucks go through the saddle. If you're sitting there, I think you'll get close-up shots come out. He doesn't have rubber boots. So Anthony walked down the dirt road just like I did, goes past my area, goes 400 yards or 300 yards beyond that. And then he walks through a sagebrush meadow up to the tree on the slope that he's got set up, and he climbed in the tree for his tree stand. Deer showed up, and my rubber boots, not once had they ever picked up my scent or noticed, or even off trail. They walked down my boot tracks, never even froze, nothing happened. Anthony's not in rubber boots, and
he just had regular
boots. Yeah, because he wasn't really planning on tree stand hunting or anything like that. And you often think, it doesn't matter that much, does it? Well, non-rubber boots like that, they leave scent on the ground, and it turns out mule deer don't like that. So these mule deer, they don't care that his boot tracks, by the way, were on the logging road. Did not care. Absolutely did not care. They're just like, walking along, and they smell him on the road, but he's on the road. They expect to smell humans on the road. Well, what would happen was bucks would not care about that and does, but as soon as they got off trail and they ran into his scent in the sage, they freaked out. They stopped, smelled the trail, looked around, ran one way, ran the next, looked around, smelled the trail. Don't care. They did not care if it was on the main road. But as soon as his scent was off the main road, they did not like it. Those old bucks got gone. They stopped what they were doing and bolted. And that was scent that they smelled from that morning, and it's now 5 p.m. on a footpath, not in the air. They didn't smell him in the tree. Elk don't necessarily do that. They smell. I watched them smell my tracks, and they're like,
whatever.
And they just kind of like, well, there was a human here, but I don't smell him now. And they're rutting, and so they're a little less intense or paying attention. But still, those are old cows. They know. But it's different behavior, okay? Mm-hmm. Fast forward to the second bull I shot. The area is lower land, and the wind blows all which way, different directions. And what I found, okay, if I'm sneaking around and I'm trying to kill elk, what I'm trying to do is figure out the wind. Wind is everything. Wind is king. Wind is live or die. Everything else you can kind of sight and noise. You can control that, and you can sneak, hide, be quiet, But wind, you can't beat the wind. And you were saying, we were talking, I was like, I keep a journal.
Yeah, I'd never thought about that.
When I'm out there, I got my phone with me, and I keep a journal each day. And I'm trying to figure out, and this is what I did last year when I killed my big bull. Last year, same thing. Very swirly winds. Great unit, great bulls, over-the-counter kind of place, general tag. But it's like, man, the wind goes one way, and then it goes the other way. I just need something reliable. When does it? What are my attack windows? When can I go in on these bulls at what spots? And it turned out that there were certain areas where, as you track the wind, you start to realize pockets where you don't get detected, times a day that work for you. Or let's say the clouds come in. You're like, I know what these elk do every day. I just need a cloudy day that comes in. And because when the clouds come in, the wind goes directional, and it goes just this way, and it overpowers the thermals. And then I can go in on these elk in a way I can't on these warm, sunny days. And so you're like, okay, well, today's not my day, but you look at the forecast and you're like, on Thursday, I'm going to get some weather, and it's going to blow in one way. That's the day I'm going to strike on this herd right here, this bull that's bedding in this spot, right? And you stay out of there the other times. When you start tracking wind, you start to figure stuff out. Like last year, I found that when there was a peak, like toward the top of a ridge line. If I was within 50 yards of the top of the ridge, the wind was directional. It just blew straight across the top. If I dropped below 50 yards on that ridge, the wind would blow directional, and then occasionally it would suck down and blow into where the elk were. So I knew as long as I stayed within 40 or 50 yards of the ridge, my wind was just going so hard in my face that I could get after these elk. But I needed those elk to be up higher on that ridge. And there's a couple trails they love to hit. And there's a wallow down below that bull loved to get into after he ditched his cows. It was a matter of time, but eventually I stayed in that pocket where the wind was directional in my face, and he got too close, and I killed him. The same thing happens on this hunt. This second bull I was going after, there was a number of big bulls, and the terrain was such that there was a steep face, and I found, like, when I came down in the morning, the wind was at my back, but it blew down a ridge line, and the elk were either on the left or right of the ridge line. So I had the ridge line, even though my scent blew straight down, the elk weren't in the scent path. So I was the same elevation or parallel to the elk, to my left or right, okay, the wind's still blowing down. Well, by 8:30 or 9, it would blow crossways and up. So I found a face, and you figure this out sort of by keeping notes and paying attention. I found a face where if I slipped down that face and I was halfway down that face, the ground in front of the face dropped so fast that even when my wind hit the back of my head and blew down canyon, the heat from the thermals and stuff coming up the face pushed my scent over the top. And you figure that out because you're testing the wind, and just because you have a wind checker or something that shows your wind blowing downhill doesn't mean it's sucking down to the ground where the elk are. It could be blowing down direction, but going up in the air.
So I've got two questions. What you say you record it. What does that look like? How are you doing that? And then my other question is, how are you checking the wind? How can you tell that wind is doing what you say it's doing?
Some of it's just a guess from experience from hunting in tree stands. If you watch the hunting public, for example, they're really good at this because they've been hanging tree stands and hunting little spots forever. And they're like, okay, the whitetails come through this pinch almost always, and they like to because the wind's going right in their face, right? But if you're off to the edge of that pinch and your wind is blowing this way, it just barely slips by them. And so they set up stands in a way that kind of helps them leverage the wind and get these big bucks because they're up in the air 20 feet too. And maybe there's a wind that comes over a ridge and takes their wind above. And you can use those little weeds, and you'll see those guys. I've seen Aaron Warbriton and those guys. They'll have a little jar that has, I forget what the weed is called. There's a couple different ones, but it's like a dandelion, like
milkweed.
Milkweed. Yes. Milkweed. People use milkweed all the time. You can also buy milkweed, synthetic type milkweed, scent trackers. And they're just like little tiny pieces of lint or feather, like fine feather. And you just pull those out of like a little container. I saw guys when we were hunting mountain goats, okay, up in those mountains. I was with Bart Lancaster.
A wind floater.
Yeah.
It's a brand, and it's like a little, it almost makes me think of like a tissue dispenser.
Yes.
But it's a little carton, and you just
pull them out. And then when I was with Bart, he would grab weeds, and he'd just set them out. And what he's trying to figure out is that mountain goat going to smell us? Because we got above the goat. Well, I would be like, there's no way. Or I would say, there's no way we can get on that goat because the wind's blowing straight to him. And Bart's like, you're in the mountains. There's different wind channels and crosswinds and things that do different things. And so sometimes you can get busted when you never thought you could, and other times you don't get busted when you feel like you should. Because in your direct vicinity, the wind might be doing one thing, but as soon as it gets past a certain rock or a certain elevation, it does something else. So when you take those milkweeds and you just let them go, you can watch them ride the air current, and you can see what is happening to your scent. So I can take those little milkweeds, right? Where I was at on this hunt with those elk, I let that thing go, and you can see it goes out like it's going to go to the elk, 100 head, 150 head down below me, and I'm on a little funnel, and the wind blows in my face most of the time, but every now and then it blows hard on my back every 30 minutes for a minute or two, and then it's back again. Well, I need to be able to stay there, and as these elk come by this little pinch, I'll have a 50-yard shot, but I can't have them smelling me down below as I'm on this bluff. It's like a bluff, okay? I'm halfway down a bluff, and so it's kind of cliffy in front of me and cliffy behind me, and I'm on the face of that cliff. It's not a real cliff, but it's steep. Elk don't walk that because it's so steep. It's rocky, it's nasty. They don't want to be on that face. So they're either below it or above it. Well, I had elk coming in underneath me, and I suspected they couldn't smell me, and so I stayed put. And the whole herd came up, and the wind blew straight toward them. I could check with the wind checker. It's going out. But I'm like, they're like 100 feet below by the time you calculate how far away they are and how much the elevation changes between me and them. It's like a 70-foot. They're 70 feet under me. By the time they get to the pinch, which is broadside to me, like to my perpendicular to me, yeah, they're on my level. They're 20 feet, but the wind isn't blowing sideways. It's blowing down over them. And so you find these little pockets where you're like, oh yeah, I can set up here and ambush and they'll never smell me. And sometimes it's just trial and error. And what I was able to figure out was, yeah, like the elk could not smell me. They would walk right under me. The wind would be blowing straight to them. If I pulled out a milkweed, I have no doubt it went out 30 yards from me or so. It went poof, shot to the sky, way above them. So as these elk come up this cut, they were not smelling me. Well, I had a nice 7x7 bull, and as happens to us, I know better. I know, like, if I drop down that face and sneak in, my wind will now, instead of blow over them, that current could just get sucked straight down the bottom. That's why you don't get in the creek bottom, which is to the right of me, because I know if I get in the creek bottom, I know what it's going to do. It's going to suck down. When I was in Mount Emily years ago, we had this bull that we were after, Anthony and I, and he had drawn this tag like with no points. I hate his guts, because it's a sought after tag. There's a video of it, old video. We go in on this bull. The wind is blowing straight up this face, straight up, and the bull is above us. There's no way to get to this bull. And every now and then it blows down right at the bull. And so you're like, this is impossible. But in the creek bottom, there's a whole bunch of trees, tons of trees. And the creek bottom itself, if you get right over the cool water and you're walking beside it, it sucks your wind down hard. And so we were blowing our wind checker, and it was like, if you stay in this creek bottom, your wind isn't escaping and going up to where the bull is. But as soon as we got 15 or 20 yards away from the creek, it switched up the hill. So you needed those cool thermals from the cool water and the rest of the heat from above kind of pushing. And what that did is it just overpowered your scent and pushed it down the creek. Well, that's your safe zone. That's the zone you can operate in. You can be in that creek and you can creep up that creek. And as long as you don't stray too far from the creek, you're going to be able to kill that bull. Well, that bull was raking a tree right next to the creek, pretty close to it. We sneak up the creek bottom, and the creek covers your sound. It's perfect. We get all the way in there. Now we're like 70 yards from the bull, but it's pretty thick. Anthony sneaks up this little bank, still stays sort of in the creek, and the wind is perfect. But he starts to go a little high, and the wind switches and blows almost toward the bull. And he's like, crap, and he backs up. He's stuck. That's as far as he can go. Anymore, you cannot cheat the wind. You cannot beat the wind. You can't outrun the wind. You can't trick the wind. You just have to obey the wind. And so he stayed in that cut, and then I started cow calling and raking a tree and screaming, and I started acting the fool over there to try to get that bull to come over. And I'm right next to the creek, and I'm breaking things and raking trees and screaming. He's screaming, I'm screaming, he's screaming, I'm screaming. And Anthony is right there. He can't go any closer. He just has to hope that bull comes in. That bull finally can't take it anymore, doesn't like it. He's pissed off, stops his raking and comes over and walks in front of Anthony. I think it was like 30 yards. And Anthony smoked him. We used the thermals in the creek in the middle of a hot afternoon where the wind was blowing left, right, sideways, up, down to keep our wind in check. This year, the same thing was happening where I was at. I found that if I stayed in that spot, that the wind would blow over or they wouldn't detect it. And over time, you start to see, okay, they're underneath me and they're not smelling me. The wind checker says the wind is going straight at them, yet they're not smelling me. You write that down in your journal. You write down what time of day it is. You're writing down what the temperature is. You're writing down if you get into an area without spooking any elk, you're writing down what time you left, what time you arrived. I'm tracking the wind to see what time of day does it switch. At first, it's blowing hard downhill. About 8:20-ish to 8:30, it starts blowing hard uphill and crossways. So I'm like, okay, as I write these things down, I start to understand the wind patterns. I know when I can move into position, when I have to hold back. There were times when I could have killed that bull, but this is what elk do. They go down to the bottom of the valleys and they feed and rut at night. It's full moon. They're doing their wild, crazy stuff. And what's the wind doing at night? It's blowing hard downhill to the bottom of the valleys. They can smell anything that's approaching them in those low valleys. Well, while the wind is still blowing hard down valley, what do those elk do? They're like, sun is coming up. We need to get to our bedding areas. And they start moving up those valleys, up those canyon bottoms, up into these shaded bedding areas. But they want to move while the wind is still blowing down in their face. They need that wind in their face so they know they're not moving into danger. They don't like to move up into their bedding area when the wind is at their back, because then their best defense is their nose. They can't protect themselves from what might be ahead of them. And so often what happens is they move with the wind in their face. That means you can't get in front of them and intercept them on their way to their bedding areas without getting detected. But in this particular place where I was hunting, the terrain is such that your wind, although blowing down, is blowing over them. And they pass, because of the terrain funneling them into a tight little pinch, they pass in a spot right next to you to take your shot. The only problem is that you need to stay about 50 yards away. couple of times, though, the herd left late. They're having sex. They're doing their thing. They're running. They're having a party. He fights a bull, and they lose track of time and the wind for whatever. They get in late. Well, in those cases, the wind's blowing at their back as they're moving in. Now, instead of me having to stay 50 yards away from that funnel, I can get 25 yards from that funnel. Because at 8:30, if they show up to that spot after 8:30, which they did a number of times, now I'm in their pocket. I can take a shot. Cheating before 8:30 cost me an opportunity because I tried to get too close, didn't stay in my safe zone. I knew I was cutting it close, but I saw a giant bull and I wanted to shoot him, and the whole herd blew out. Days in a row, I stayed back 50 yards. They never smelled me. That little difference caused my wind to creep on down. Same thing happened on that 7x7 bull in the middle of the afternoon in the face. I decided, well, I only need 30 yards. So I crept down quickly to this 30-yard mark, and just before I was about to shoot that bull, I dropped in elevation, I don't know, probably 30 feet in elevation. Boom, wind, I could feel the wind blow right down there, and they blew out of there. And it's like, I learn, and it's always a balance. You're striking the balance between risk and reward. Thing was, those are the sort of mistakes that Lampert's doesn't make very often, and others. They're just more like patient. I'm getting there. I'm getting better. But what I needed to do was just stay where I was. That bull was probably going to walk up and give me a 30-yard shot. There was a bunch of cows up here. I just got excited, and I left the safe zone and rolled the dice. The thing is, if they don't smell me and they don't blow out, you're always still in the game. So I just keep learning, don't try to cheat the wind. It just isn't worth it. It just isn't worth it. Because as long as they didn't smell me, I was always in the mix. I never saw that 7x7 after that, by the way.
Oh, dang.
Instead, a big 6 came in, not nearly as good a bull, but still one I targeted for 2 more days. But the 7x7 was gone after that. And it seemed like that spot I was in, elk wanted to be there every day. And if it wasn't that herd, it was going to be a different herd. And I was running into hundreds of elk at a time per day. So, the other thing was there was a ton of elk, when I'm on that face, that flat face, the elk in front of me didn't smell me and the elk behind me didn't smell me. So the wind, I had elk on the ridge right above me screaming, and I saw them like walking by, and I could see a 5x5 bull up there screaming, and he's like 50 yards above me on the bank, right? And my wind is blowing straight up this face. It seems like it should be blowing right in his face. Nothing. Had 8 cows walk down the hill with the wind blowing right in my face, up that face. And they were walking sidewise, and then they came within 6 yards of me. One was like 4 feet away and just walked right on by. I'm like sitting there frozen. Every day I had tight encounters, and they didn't smell me. And my suspicion is that bluff is so steep, and the wind blows hard in your face. Then it blows hard at your back. I think it blows so hard that it hits that face, and those thermals are just pushing up. It just goes straight up. It doesn't wrap over the top.
Huh.
There's momentum behind that wind. And you got the heat and the cool air, and I think it just pushes it up. I don't really know, but I keep the journal. I can't see the wind. If you have a wind indicator you can float out there, it can kind of help you a little bit. And you're always shocked. Years ago, I was hunting in Ohio, and I shot that buck, Big Sexy. They've been trying to kill that buck for, I don't know, they've been trying to kill this buck for a while. They had him pretty well patterned with game cameras and stuff like that. However, when someone tried to sit in a stand to kill him, he never showed up. And I was like, because the setup's wrong. He knows you're there. Mm-hmm. He doesn't get old for,
How did you
by
know
luck.
that their setup was bad?
Well, when I got there, I could see that the stand was too low. It was like 20 feet. And you can take a wind indicator, which I did, and you float it out there, and about 120 yards out, your scent would hit the ground. Mm-hmm. Sometimes if it was really hot in the middle of the day and you've let the thing float out, it would drop and hit the ground at 70 yards or 80 yards. So these bucks and these does, they would like clockwork, they would walk behind my stand and check it. Mm-hmm. And if they didn't check me, if they didn't smell me at 70 yards, some of them would go even further back and walk at 100, 120. And I'm like, okay.
They know.
These suckers, they know that there's something here, and they always scent check it before they go any further. And maybe they discovered me on accident, or the stand on accident or whatever, but they knew.
They were on.
And so the way that the thermals worked in that area is like, great, the wind blows this way and you have a thick forest behind you, but it didn't stop those whitetails from walking over stuff and getting in the wind direction and checking that spot. And I started to see a bunch of deer would walk out, and it was on an old logging road that was all overgrown with trees and stuff, but still the essence of the road is still there, the remnants of the road. And so there's no tall trees in there. They're just waist high. They would walk out and they would look down that corridor where there's no trees because it's a road, an old road, and the tree stand was right on the edge, and they'd look right up at the tree where the tree stand is and go, oh yeah, there's a dude there, and then walk off a different direction or blow their nose and stomp and leave. And I'm like, this is ridiculous. So these deer knew exactly what was going on. I didn't like the setup. Of course, there are deer who didn't know that would just come wandering in. It's the rut, whatever.
Yeah.
But the deer that were, the smarter or that had stumbled on this fact because they were checking. So I basically got like a bunch more climbing sticks, and I'm like, I want to go 40 feet up. I want to be so high that my wind no longer drifts downward, but instead just gets carried upward because of the thermals. And if it does drift downward, it's drifting downward 300-400 yards out, and dissipated a lot. So I raised the stand, and for 2 days I was 40 feet up instead of 20 feet up. Deer would come down and they look down the road, and I wasn't there. And they're like, oh, visually I don't see a stand there. I don't see a person. And I'm watching them look right at where I used to be. I'm not there anymore. And then I would see them come and circle and come downwind of me, and they didn't smell me. And they're at 100 yards, 120 or so, and they're like, it's cool. And so Big Sexy shows up. This is the last night to hunt. Hadn't seen him, I've never laid eyes on him except on photos. Buck comes walking out, steps onto the road way out there, like 200 and something yards out. And he looks, and I'm like, that's a brute. What a stud. And he's looking down the road, and there's freezing rain and snow and ice everywhere. It's been gnarly cold, like awful. And, it's just before dark. And he's looking down that road, and he's like, doesn't see me in the tree. And then he goes into the woods. And he starts circling. And I'm like, okay, sucker, do it. Circles, gets downwind of my tree, exactly in a straight line. If I were to check the wind, he's exactly in my wind funnel, right? And he stands there, and he's got his nose up, and he's just trying to pick me up. Guess what? My scent's blowing way over his head. If he wants to pick me up, he needs to be another 100 yards further into the woods, further downwind. And I don't know what happens to your wind that far downwind either, and how much of it dissipates, or I don't know if it goes straight up at the altitude I'm in. All I know is I kept a journal, and the sucker didn't smell me. And he smells, and it was so crazy because I'm just sitting there like, come on. Sure enough, he decides I'm not there. Trots in underneath my stand, like not a care in the world. He's been so cautious so far, and now he's like, yeah, I'm totally good. Comes walking in down the trail, and he has some scrapes and stuff he likes to hit, and he comes in, and I go to full draw, no idea I'm there. Stop him and shoot him at like 20 yards, and he's dead. That is eye-opening. Another experience I had was in Oregon, and I shot my first big branch, like heavy bull in Oregon. And it was over a water hole where the wind went left, right, all over the place. It blew like crazy. But every day, if there was no one on the water hole, those elk would come in. But if you were on the water hole, they circled it, and there was no getting in. So I brought in a tree stand. I put that tree stand like 40, 45 feet in the air. Me and Ben, we climbed to the moon in this tree. Set it up, and we're way up there. And I'm looking down, and I'm like checking the wind, and it's blowing this way, it's blowing that way, but it's way, way high. So I'm like, okay, we'll see what happens. Ben is like, I'm bored. Ben can't sit in a tree stand or sit still to save his life. So he's in the stand with me 20 minutes. Bulls are screaming everywhere, and I'm like, they're going to come in, man. I can tell. Ben's like, gets down, leaves. 20 minutes after Ben leaves, 2 monster sixes come walking in, and they're screaming through the trees. And they're screaming, and they're coming downwind of the hole, and they're checking it. Their noses are up, and they're taking a few steps, but they're also distracted because it's 2 bulls, and one bull is like swinging his antlers toward the other one, and he's trying to act macho, but he's backing down. And then he pulls his antlers back like, I'm tough too. But clearly there was a dominant one and a lesser 6, and the lesser 6 scored higher. He'd score higher, but he didn't have the weight and the body that the bigger one did. And the bigger one was real heavy. I liked his rack. I'm a sucker for mass. And they come walking in. Eventually he gets to 20 yards. I'm at full draw. I shoot him right behind the shoulder, hits both lungs. He doesn't quite know what happens because maybe the arrow was from above. I'm not sure, but he gets hit and he only jumps to the side and he's just standing there. And immediately he started to cough blood. Blood starts coming out and he starts stumbling. And the other elk is just watching him. And then the bull falls down and he died fast. So the other bull just stands there and looks at him and he's like, that was really fishy. And that bull trots out, and kid you not, he trots out. He goes about 100 yards outside the wallow. And this is mostly open grass with just a little stretch of timber on the side and then grass. It's really open country. It's just that right next to the water, there's a few big trees. And I would happen to be in that tree. But outside of those trees, there's a little bit in the timber. There's a stretch of timber, and they come up through the timber pocket because the wind's perfect and they have some cover. They're not in the open. But this bull jogs out about 100 yards, and he does a full circle around the waterhole, nose in the air, smelling. Completes one circle, comes in about 50 yards, does another circle, smells around the hole, stands there for a while, comes in till he's about 20 yards away. Slowly walks the hole, nose in there, does 3 complete circles around the water hole, scent checking it. Full circles, like trying to get a wind that's just from one direction or another. Never smelled me. As soon as he did 3 complete circles, he's like, I don't know what happened to that bull. He just died, but whatever. And he runs into the water hole and wallows for 10 or 15 minutes, plays around, drinks, and then runs back to the herd. The other bull's just dead right there. And I was like, again, I watched the scent. I watched how this bull reacted to how he scent checked the water hole and his approach, how when he got suspicious, he made 3 complete circles around it, narrowing in on it. These animals use their noses, but wind patterns they're not just like either they blow left or they blow right. There's all sorts of currents and heat and cold and thermals that affect these things. So you asked about like notes that I like to keep. And here's kind of an example of what I write down. I'll just blow through it really quick. Wind blew downhill until 8:20. Moved to new spot, northwest side of the wallow. At 8:30, wind blew uphill and sideways both directions, but mostly blew up and northwest to my leftward side when facing the wallow, providing a good wind if a bull comes from the left, right, or below me. The bull above me and to the right doesn't seem to have smelled me yet. That bull was like 40 yards away, bugling for 2 or 3 hours. My wind would blow uphill straight to him. He did not care. He did not detect me on that face. So I'm like, okay, even though my wind's blowing straight to him, there must be some kind of thermal wind pattern right here that is keeping him from discovering my scent. Keep that's something to remember. The bull above me or waking up at 4:30 and hiking in early was better than waking up at 5:30. I noticed if I got there a little bit early, the elk were down in the valley. And when they came up, they would come up and I would already be there way before they got there. There were times when I left later, an hour later, and I would bump into elk on the way in that I wouldn't bump into if I left an hour earlier. That was important. On a normal thermal day, sitting on the ledge above the wallow, about 40 yards from the wallow on the northeast side, provides a good downward wind away from the walls until 8:30. On a overcast day, the wind was especially unreliable on the northeast ridge. Elk went nuts between 7:50 and 9:30. They went quiet from 10:45 to 11:30 a.m. On the wallow, on day 1, 3 elk hit the wallow between 8 and 9. Big bull wandered around at 8:30 and the wind busted me. I learned as I was about to shoot this bull at full draw, the wind switched, hit him, nose went in the air, and he booked it. I was really frustrated. It was the first day I had really discovered this one wallow, and I thought I was in a pretty good spot, even though the wind was swirling. But I learned that even though I thought that wind was carrying above him, it didn't. It blew right over the wallow every time from that position. So I had to find a different one. Some wallows wouldn't work. I just couldn't get on them without the wind going all directions. And as I took more and more notes, I started to learn what was working and what wasn't, how low on the hill I could get. I'd take pictures sometimes and I'll diagram it out and I'll use OnX maps, and I start to sort of map approaches, and you just kind of start dissecting an area. And trial and error let me know too. It wasn't just I'd check the wind and I would know because I would know if I got busted or not. I was on this one wallow where bulls were coming in with cows and cows were coming in. It was a pretty hot wallow day after day. And what I learned was didn't matter what direction they came from, roughly. 4 out of 10 times I got busted. 6 out of 10 times, no elk detected me. It was a little better than 50-50. But I didn't like the spot because I don't want to be detected at all, ever. I don't want the elk day after day after day to feel that pressure and know I'm there and start to become wary. So I found like I'm going to abandon this spot because I don't want 50-50. I like 90-10 or 100%, right? So I found a different spot where I could play those winds during the afternoon. Some areas are really good. Like last year when I hunted for elk, the areas where I hunted were really good in the morning and the evening. I really couldn't go after elk until after 5 p.m. or 5:30. And that was my window. And I had to do it before dark. It was in that little tight window. Otherwise, I was going to get busted every time. And you start to realize like, okay, I'm locked in by these wind patterns. And this is spot and stock, by the way, kind of stuff. Even in heavily timbered, which is kind of where these elk were bedded on the second hunt. It was pretty timbered. You're messing around with, in those situations, it's not like my earlier hunt where I could stake my life on the wind direction and just work it all day long and go after a bedded bull or whatever. In these other areas, I'm confined to spots I've determined are good ambush points based on the notes and the little experience and checking the wind and some hunches from experience with how wind behaves. And you start being able to figure out, okay, this is how I can work this area. Now, you're going to find out on this later podcast that I recorded with Bryce how I killed my bull, my second bull. And we ended up taking advantage of an area that had really, really bad swirling winds, unreliable wind, terrain features that didn't lend themselves to me being able to get in tight for an ambush. When it's relatively flat and there's not much timber and there's no steep bluffs, drops, cliffs, it's really hard for an archer to get right in an animal's pocket and take a shot when winds swirl. But like on a mule deer hunt, let's say the wind does swirl left, right, blah, 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 blah. But your buck is bedded, 50 yards, 30 yards below a cliff. And that wind blows hard downhill, but it doesn't go to the cliff and then drop like a rock to the base of the cliff. It goes over the cliff and keeps going. That buck doesn't smell you. You can get right on the edge of the cliff and shoot him down below. So I love badlands. I love cliffs, coulees, different terrain features that give you these advantages both in wind and cover. When elk are out in this open area where I killed my bull, you're just screwed. There's nothing to work with in terrain or wind, but it's where all the elk congregated that day. And they blew out of the other area I had been hunting that I had kind of worked. And so I had to change tactics a little bit, and they were crazy tactics, but they worked. And we'll get into that later, but because it wasn't really necessarily, I guess it was sort of a spot and stalk, but it was more like a run and gun, improvise, decoy, fake trick, elk, which in a swirling wind type of unit and area is kind of like throwing back to my old run and gun days, where that's what you have to work with. That's what you have to work with. I feel like right now I have enough tools in my quiver and different tactics I can use that when certain terrain calls for calling in bulls and whatever, like on the Oregon coast, and it's dense and thick and so forth, you're not going to tiptoe and sneak in on them because you have to bushwhack through blackberries on every step or whatever.
You're not going to make that happen.
You're not going to sneak on anything within bow range. And it's so thick. So calling and running gunning and sounding like an elk is perfect for the Oregon coast. So having different tools, I think, are really great. But my preferred method and the way I feel like I can get after the biggest bulls by far is a spot and stock scenario with reliable winds and more open country. But in those areas, like I said, where the wind does switch a lot, you can still learn these wind patterns, taking notes and kind of testing things and following along. Like I said, all these years of hunting in a tree stand and hunting even small areas and really honing in what works and what doesn't work in a small spot, really, I think I'm using those same gut instincts and skills and knowledge that I gained from those experiences on my elk hunts too. And it works for me. And some guys I know would just leave that spot and go hunt somewhere else. But when you put eyes on a 7x7 like that, you're like, I got to stay here. He's not the bull I got. I'm happy with the bull I got. Real happy. Big, heavy bull. But again, different tactics for different things. But I hope this discussion on wind and thermals and, taking notes is useful. The upcoming podcasts, we're going to get into more detail on the actual hunt with guys that were with me, because I do these interviews with them. I hunted solo for 5 days on the second hunt, and it just so happened the day I killed Bryce, my friend Bryce Bishop, joined me that day. I was really passing on so many smaller bulls, 5s and 6s. I was like, Bryce, if you still have some time and can break away, you should come out here because you can kill a bull. Like I'm sending him photos and stuff of bulls. I'm like, yeah, bet you'd like this bull, and finally Bryce is like, I can't take it. So he showed up and came out there, and I was really helping Bryce get a bull. That whole stalk where I killed my bull originally was a Bryce trying to help him get a 5. I had more days I could put in, and we had a bull in a right spot. And then as things unfolded, I hijacked that hunt and I killed that big 6. And you'll hear more about that story. It's a pretty wild one. You listened to the podcast yesterday. What'd you think?
It was pretty good. Bryce is, there were some unorthodox techniques that he was a little worried about. It was one of those situations where it was like, let's just see if we can get 10 feet closer. Oh, we did it. We'll see if we can get another 10 feet closer.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. That's how all my hunts are, really. On coos deer, mule deer, on spot and stock scenarios. A lot of times it's like, let's get as close as we can. And then if we don't think we can get any closer without blowing animals, we wait. And then things unfold and the hunt evolves, and you're just like always improvising a little bit at a time. But one thing that I will say is I don't give up on hunts. Like I'm like a dog with a bone, man. It's like once I got it and it's in there, I don't really quit until it truly is a failed venture.
Yeah.
Otherwise I'm just like, no, we might salvage this. This might work out. You see that with, like you watch some Born and Raised videos and you're like, the calling is over. This ain't going to work. And they call that same bull back in. They just busted it. And they work that thing and they work that thing and they don't give up. And a lot of times that's what it takes to punch that tag, to kill that animal. It takes just never quitting.
That's the whole dating game. You just kind of have to throw yourself out there. You never know. You might bag that 10.
You get trampled, you get walked on, you get destroyed, but you stick with it and maybe it'll work out.
Yeah, just ask my wife.
Yeah. Yeah. So I hope that's useful to you. Thanks for tuning in. Like I said, use the code GRITTY at a couple of these places. The codes are in those description fields in the YouTube videos. You can always find our stuff there. And hope you like it. Leave us comments, man. That really helps us know if we're on track, if you're enjoying the content, if you want us to cover or answer more questions. Leave us comments. I've got a few more days to record a few more shows and get more stuff in the queue before I take off on another hunt with lampers. This time we're breaking out the boomsticks and we're going on a wild adventure in some very remote backcountry. And we're going to try to find some big mule deer bucks. So that's the plan in a few days. So got a few more days to get some stuff done and out the door. But let us know what you're thinking, what you like. And thanks for tuning in and supporting the show. Stay gritty.